Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Tuesday, July the 7th, 2026. Today is a last quarter moon. The moon is in Aries, the sun is in Cancer, the lunar cycle is coming to a close. Well, there's a week left of the lunar cycle before we see the next new moon. And last quarter moons can give us a certain sense of urgency. We haven't got much longer. There's something we want to complete, perhaps. I mean, we understand what this lunar cycle is all about, and with that understanding comes an awareness of just what hasn't been done yet. So that might be something that we need to think about it, and I do think that the last quarter moon could affect all of us, regardless of our sign. We also got Neptune going stationary retrograde, and that is certainly something I will be talking about. You might notice occasionally in the video I say Neptune stationary direct, but that is a slip of the tongue. Neptune is definitely going retrograde today, and so let's look at this last quarter moon and some of the other things going on astrologically before we look at the 12 signs. So here is the chart for today, set for noon, New York time, on Tuesday, July the 7th, 2026. By the way, don't forget to like and subscribe if appropriate. So in this chart, you can see that the moon is in Aries. There is a moon at 13 degrees 45 Aries, and there's the sun at 15 degrees Cancer. So you can see that they're square one another. So if you look at moon, if you consider moon in Aries in its raw form, moon in Aries is about action, spontaneous action. The moon is perhaps about our feelings and the way we respond, and so when the moon is in Aries, we feel that we can act, we should act. That's our first response. In fact, you could argue that when you're dealing with the moon is kind of what we do when we're in difficulties. When we don't know what to do, we feel stuck. So when we feel stuck, what do? Got to do something, and that can be the moon in Aries. But this moon in Aries is doing quite a lot of stuff. I mean, it's making a conjunction to Saturn, and it's making a square to the sun. So the moon is under pressure. For sure, we want to do things. We want to take the initiative. But if it's conjunct Saturn and square the sun, there are things holding it back. Okay, you could say moon conjunct Saturn. There are all sorts of reasons why we can't do what we want to do. And, it's like when we do feel a sense of urgency, and I think we could feel urgency today because of that moon square sun. When people feel urgency, there can also be a sense of frustration. Sometimes it's more difficult to do things when we feel that we're up against the clock. We know when the sands of time are sort of passing, and go, what are we going to do? Got to do something, but what? And so that I think it could be quite difficult. But if we can maintain our composure and realize that the lunar cycle has not finished yet. We've got a week, and there is a last chance to do something of importance. And we don't have to do too many things. In fact, we don't have the opportunity to do too many things. There's probably just one thing that we need to do, and if we can do that one thing, that is probably enough. And yesterday, when I did the horoscope for Monday, horoscopes for Monday, I mentioned the fact that the sun was square Saturn. Well, the sun is still square Saturn, and There it is, the Sun at 15 degrees Cancer. There is Saturn at 14 degrees Aries. So still very much there. And the Moon is making a square to the Sun. So we have we don't just have a first quarter moon, we have a first quarter moon connected to Saturn. We have a first quarter moon conjunct Saturn, and I do think that that is important. And I want to just have another look at that Sun square Saturn in light of the fact that we have a first quarter moon. But there are some other things to mention as well. There is also the fact that Neptune is stationary direct. So today Neptune comes to a standstill. And I think it happens at 11:55 a.m. I think I've got this right. Here is a chart for Neptune going retrograde. So it happens July the 7th today at 11:55 a.m. London time. So that's going to be, what's that going to be? That's going to be 6:55 a.m. New York time. Sort of earlier if you're in California, for example. And so the question is, does that mean anything? I mean, should we be worried about Neptune going stationary direct? Well, when you look at Neptune, firstly you have to consider, where is it going stationary direct? So there's Neptune. It's at 4 degrees 25 Aries. And Neptune will stay direct, stationary retrograde. I do get them sort of mixed up, don't I? Neptune's going retrograde, sorry. So Neptune is going retrograde until December the 12th. So it's going backwards, and it's now at 4 degrees 25 Aries, and it goes backwards all the way to 1 degree 37 Aries. So it's not a huge amount it goes backwards. I mean, it goes backwards about sort of 3 degrees, and it takes its time. And so Neptune going retrograde, it could be that some of us were starting to make up our mind with Neptune in Aries. It was moving forward. It seemed that some things were going clear. We perhaps were feeling about what was going on in society. How is society unfolding? What new trends are starting to develop? We might be seeing them in social media. Neptune is very much about sort of social media. So we see these trends, and they seem to be developing. But then perhaps they stop, and it might be about people trying to stop them. Could it be, for example, some countries, Australia and the UK, are trying to restrict who has access to social media? That might be Neptune retrograde. Some people trying to hold Neptune back. So Neptune, represents kind of collective forces that really can't be avoided. And they are going to manifest sooner or later. And, when you think about Neptune in Aries, you can make a contrast between Neptune in Aries and Neptune in Pisces. And, I talked about Neptune in Pisces, and, I thought that Neptune in Pisces might, for example, have been about this sort of obsession with wokeness and diversity and inclusion, and that's how you might have evaluated Neptune in Pisces. And with Neptune in Aries, it kind of felt that perhaps people were moving on from that. Certainly in the United States, companies were sacking their diversity officers, and there was sort of less obsession with diversity. And in the United Kingdom, you had the you had the Supreme Court ruling that women are women, and this might be all signs that Neptune is moving out of Pisces. But maybe with Neptune going retrograde, there's a tendency for some people to be trying to resists this. They kind of want Neptune to go back into Pisces, and they might hope that Neptune will go back into Pisces, but as we know, Neptune goes stationary direct on December the 12th at 1 degree 37 Aries. Neptune never does go back into Aries, into Pisces. So that is a way in which things can work, and it just may be that there are certain trends in society that were developing with Neptune in Aries, which kind of got arrested, which are about to be arrested, and it might seem between now and the end of the year that things are going backwards. People are trying to sort of go back to Neptune in Pisces, but I don't think, or obviously they're not going to succeed. I mean, that's one way of looking at Neptune going retrograde. It's just kind of sort of backwards looking, and we know what Neptune in Aries is really about. Neptune in Aries, for example, is about looking for leadership, clear direction. After all, Neptune is in Aries. We want to move forward, but it might just seem short term that things are just becoming sort of chaotic again. But don't worry, Neptune will eventually go direct. And so that's the picture for Neptune going retrograde. One thing about Neptune going stationary retrograde. One thing about Neptune going stationary retrograde is its midpoint. It is exactly on the Uranus-Pluto midpoint, within 2 arc minutes, and this connection between these 3 planets, because Jupiter will join it. Jupiter will soon get to 4 degrees Leo, which, I mean, some astrologers putting out YouTube videos have called it Barbo's basket, and it's certainly a basket involving 3 planets. Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune are really closely configured here, and so with Neptune on the Uranus-Pluto midpoint, this represents just ideas about the revolution, perhaps. I mean, not necessarily the real revolution, I mean, as in changes of government, but, Uranus and Pluto is a dramatic pairing. It's about things changing, just not being satisfied with the status quo, overthrowing things. And so Neptune on a Uranus-Pluto can be about the idealism behind a revolution, that things are going to get better. Things surely are going to get better. Now, as far as meaning is concerned, let me just tell you what Reinhold Ebertin says about Neptune on a Uranus-Pluto midpoint, because it's really close to that midpoint at the moment. So Reinhold Ebertin in The Combination of Stellar Influences, the book is available. I think it's published by the this translation is published by the American Federation of Astrologers. So the Uranus-Pluto midpoint, and what what it means for Neptune to be on a Uranus-Pluto midpoint. Well, Ebertin regards Uranus-Pluto as being about transformation and about revolution and the whole process by which a transformation happens. And so Neptune on a Uranus-Pluto midpoint is a sympathetic understanding of other people, the knowledge of human nature, deep study of a subject of special interest, the inclination to delve into the supernatural realms. But insecurity and uncertainty, unfulfilled wishes, fatigue, and nervous diseases and neuroses. So there could be just something a little bit over-optimistic about Neptune on Uranus-Pluto midpoint. We might think we're on the brink of some sort of radical change, that it can all happen, but then Neptune goes retrograde, and we might see or recognize that some of our hopes might have been rather exaggerated. And now I want to talk about the first quarter moon. Well, before I talk about the first quarter moon, Here is the chart for today set for Sydney, Australia. So it's it's not so different. The moon is still in Aries in Australia and New Zealand, but very much at the beginning of Aries. So if you are in Australia or New Zealand or East Asia, perhaps moon conjunct Neptune is going to be an aspect of particular importance rather than moon conjunct Saturn. So perhaps you've got the uncertainty and chaos of moon conjunct Neptune and the moon conjunct Saturn, and the rigidity and the structure of that moon conjunct Saturn. That might not become an issue until sort of later in the day. So it might be a moon Neptune conjunction kind of day. So don't get confused. Don't get drunk. Of course, Neptune is of course associated with alcohol, but it's the moon. The moon moves quickly. And then there is the heliocentric view, putting the sun at the center of the solar system. And from a heliocentric view, well, Venus is now opposition Mars, pretty much exactly opposition Mars heliocentrically. And so with heliocentric, with that opposition, it's about people struggling to get recognized, people wanting to be attractive, wanting to attract, and perhaps overdoing it. Venus opposition Mars. Well, Mars is kind of attacking Venus in a way. Venus might feel a bit overwhelmed by Mars, and so perhaps people are trying too hard to get attention. Additionally, Mercury is beginning to make a square to Saturn. In fact, Mercury is on the Saturn-Neptune midpoint, and so with Mercury on the Saturn-Neptune midpoint, we already have the moon on the Saturn-Neptune midpoint geocentrically. So heliocentrically, we've got Mercury square the Saturn-Neptune midpoint. So there's a lot to there's a lot to worry about, or at least we feel there's a lot to worry about. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the worries we have are necessarily ever going to manifest, because that is the nature of Saturn and Neptune. It can be about fear, but it can also be about unreal fear. We just might be concerned about nothing. And then there is the last quarter moon. So here is the moment of the last quarter moon, set for Washington DC. I mean, why not? And so the sun is at 15 degrees 42 Capricorn, the moon is at 15 degrees 42 Aries. Now, the thing about this last quarter moon is that it is obviously it's connected with the sun, but it's connected with Saturn as well. So this last quarter moon really is quite Saturnine. And I've said that a last quarter moon can be about realizing what has not been done, what has not been finished. And we're perhaps in a hurry to get things done. We realize that there's a certain sense of urgency, and that is the nature of Saturn. We might be thinking, can we ever finish? Maybe there are obstacles in front of us that are going to prevent us from completing. But of course, Saturn, is a planet of hard work and structure and obligation. So many of us may experience this last quarter moon as something that could actually be quite motivating, but we will have to put in the work. So it may not be a bad thing. Now, this last quarter moon is even more serious than it looks when you start to look at other things in the chart. Firstly, there's True Black Moon Lilith. So True Black Moon Lilith is opposition the sun, it's square the moon, and it's square Saturn. So True Black Moon Lilith, okay, we could see that in a psychological way. And if one is thinking about what is holding us back, it might be things from the past are restricting us. We're afraid to go further. We don't know what we might be unleashing those sort of dark forces under the surface. They're just ready to manifest if we give them a chance. So perhaps it's better to do nothing. Additionally, we have the influence of Hades. So if we turn on the hypothetical planets, you will see what I mean. So let's turn on the hypotheticals, and you can see that Hades is at 15 degrees 21 at the time of the last quarter moon, 15 degrees 21 Cancer, and so it's pretty close. It's pretty close to the Sun in Cancer, and so the Hades is opposition True Black Moon Lilith, and Hades is square the Moon. So there is a strong Hades feel to this last quarter moon. And when you throw in True Black Moon Lilith as well, you might argue that this last quarter moon could be a real problem. It could bring things to the surface. And when you think about Hades, Hades might be connected with criminality, for example. It can be connected with just the decay all around us, and last quarter moon on a sort of a personal level. The moon is waning. It's an unfortunate moon anyway because it's waning, and you throw in Hades, and we see perhaps everything around us is waning. The waning of society, the waning of communities, the waning of the environment. Okay, that's not necessarily the case, but that's how we might experience it all. Things are not getting better. Things are getting worse. And this may be reflected by certain people's actions, and perhaps actions coming to the surface, or the temptation to act in an immoral and even criminal way that some people might experience with this last quarter moon tied up with True Black Moon Lilith and Hades. So I think there is a way of looking at this last quarter moon in really quite a negative light. And additionally, the sun sun moon midpoint is at 0 degrees 42 Gemini. So Hades is semi-square the sun moon midpoint. So yeah, it is very much something connected with Hades. And as far as what Vita would say about Hades on the sun moon midpoint, to give you an idea. So if we look at let's find the sun moon. So having Hades on the sun moon midpoint, that really does emphasize the Hades principle. And Vita says about Hades on the sun moon midpoint, he says, he looks at it in terms of relationships, of course, with reference to, we just talked about marriages and Taylor Swift. I'm not saying this has anything to do with Taylor Swift, but anyway, Hades on the sun moon midpoint, he says, miserable married life, partnership or friendship, the prostitute, sad hours, dealing with disagreeable matters on a daily basis. So yeah, that sounds a bit difficult. The sun moon is about the male and the female. It's how we relate. It's the sort of the cosmic marriage. And so when you put Hades in there, you can see how that might be that a lot of relationships are not going to work. A lot of relationships are going to perhaps be sort of low, base, miserable, perhaps transactional as well. And if we look at the dial, it's not all bad. I know I've been rather negative, but there are some positive things that we can say about this chart. So if we look at the dial of the last quarter moon, so because it's the last quarter moon, because the sun and the moon are square, that means that on the 90-degree dial it's shown as a conjunction. So that's what that there it is. So although this last quarter moon is completely tied up with Hades, and Hades does have a big influence on it, another midpoint that's connected with it is Jupiter ascendant. So it's on the Jupiter ascendant midpoint. And, being on the Jupiter ascendant midpoint is not, Jupiter-Aries midpoint. So on the Jupiter-Aries, the Jupiter-Aries is about the principle of, just being happy in the world, feeling that there are things to be optimistic about. And so with that, it maybe we have a choice here. We could dwell on everything that is absolutely unpleasant, and we may see unpleasant things take place in the news, in the world around us. But in terms of our own lives, I think at the same time, without being naive, we should still be aware that things could be better, that we can make things better, and there are still things to be positive about. And additionally, this last quarter moon is aspecting the Venus-Uranus midpoint, and so Venus-Uranus, in a pure form, it can be about relationships. It can be quite exciting, and this last quarter moon might be about something happening within a relationship that we weren't necessarily expecting, and maybe it's nothing to do with Hades. It might be something exciting, something to make us happy. It could be about people appearing from nowhere, people who could do us good. They needn't just be about people who are harmful or criminal or immoral. So there are different ways of looking at this last quarter moon. It's not all bad, but overall, I think that we should be somewhat worried about it. Well, simply because it's so connected with True Black Moon Lilith and Hades and Saturn as well. So that Saturn really does have an impact on it. So this last quarter moon, we do have to face reality, and we do have to face reality about what's going on around us. And as individuals, we have a choice. We may make a decision to really focus on the Jupiter-Aries midpoint. But when you're talking about politicians and governments, people in power, then they don't have so much choice, and maybe we can start to see the unpleasantness that people in power are able to manifest. And so now I want to turn to the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Tuesday, July the 7th, 2026. Aries. The moon is very much in your sign, and it's making a square to the sun in Cancer. That means it is a last quarter moon. The lunar cycle is coming to a close, and with this last quarter moon in Aries, it might be a time where you have to think about what is the next step? What do you need to do? It might be the case that if you leave it much longer, then you might have missed your chance. So, Aries, I think that you need to be quite responsible. You don't have to panic, but you have to think, what is kind of left to do. The weekend is very much over. It's now a Tuesday, and if you don't take action now, it's just possible that you could miss your chance, and therefore I think it's a good idea to be quite focused and quite responsible. I mean, the moon doesn't just make a square to the sun; it makes a conjunction to Saturn. So moon Saturn conjunction. I know that aspect might sound rather difficult, rather grim, and it might not be complete fun having Moon conjunct Saturn, but if you're prepared to take a serious approach, then I think that's going to be fine. And yesterday we had Sun square Saturn, and that Sun square Saturn is still very much with you, and so I'm confident that you can rise to the challenge. And if you have got something you need to do, if you want to be responsible and organized and together, then that really isn't going to be much of a problem. Okay, it's going to require some effort, but you've certainly got what it takes. And while you're going through the day, I don't think that you're going to be too much of a problem for other people. I mean, okay, sometimes when you've got Aries on a mission, then everyone has to jump. Aries wants things done. It's not going to hang around, and you might potentially have high expectations, but you're going to know how to present yourself. You'll know what you can get away with. And today, if you need to be friendly, if you need to get on with people, you might still be in a hurry, but you kind of know that people have to be treated with a certain amount of kindness, and you know that you need ideally to have people on your side. That does take a bit of time, and you can allow your charm to sort of percolate through the environment, and you can look for ways in which people can work together. So if you're in any position of responsibility or authority, there are people working under you, people who respect you, then I don't think there should be any difficulty leveraging that situation. So Aries, don't think that today it's all down to you, that you're alone, that you can't trust people. I think in many cases, you can trust people. I think people will be there for you, and if you tell them what's on your mind, what you need done, I think they'll be happy to cooperate. I mean, after all, the moon is making a sextile to Mars, especially during the first part of the day, and that moon sextile Mars, it's a dynamic aspect. It allows you to be dynamic and just be clear. I mean, don't be afraid of being clear. What you don't want to do is be embarrassed, feel that you have to be a bit subtle. You don't want to be too pushy. Well, yeah, then there might be confusions. People need to understand what you want. And you have to also bear in mind that Neptune is going retrograde. Yeah, so Neptune is has been in your sign for some time, and since the beginning of the year, and it stays in your sign. But today it does come to a standstill, and it is retrograde until December the 12th. So pretty much for the rest of the year, Neptune is retrograde, and so with Neptune retrograde, it's possible that you might lose touch with some of your sort of idealistic edge. I mean, Aries as a sign can be idealistic. There are things you want, and you have an idea about the way things could be, and you feel that you have perhaps the option to put it all into practice. But with Neptune going retrograde, you might kind of lose touch with that. You might have your doubts, and you don't want to have self-doubts. Not really. I mean, okay, there's always an opportunity, there's always a benefit in reflection, asking yourself whether some of your crazier ambitions are really worth pursuing. But if you have too many doubts, you could lose touch with things. So Aries, I would really urge you to see things through, especially with Neptune going retrograde. And additionally, we've got the moon, this moon making a conjunction to Neptune. So there is certainly a possibility here of you losing the plot, and perhaps that's why with this last quarter moon, it is very important that you do see it through. Sure, it's always a good time it's always good to reflect. But if you pause for too long, you might miss the moment. And so this is why today, or one of the reasons why today, it just is important that you're able to, keep moving, and that you're prepared to really see things through, even if you don't necessarily feel like it. And so that really does matter. And in terms of relationships, I wouldn't put too much emphasis into particular people. Okay, you might feel obliged to certain people. You might have a lot of contact with one other person, or maybe a couple of other people. But if you worry too much about other people's interests and go out of your way to make them happy, then that's another reason why you might lose your cutting edge. And don't forget, Aries, you are capable of coming over as being reasonable and accommodating without having to take things too far. In fact, it's probably okay to just be yourself. I mean, that's maybe just what people want. You act in a way that is friendly but spontaneous, and you don't feel any excessive need to explain or apologize. And in that way, I think that you'll be able to move forward with everything. Taurus. The moon is still in Aries. I mean, in fact, it's very much in Aries, and it's certainly not going into Taurus today. I don't think it's going into Taurus tomorrow. And so that might mean, Taurus, that you possibly want to hold back on things. There are things you would like to do, but it just might not feel as if it's the right opportunity. You're not feeling, particularly together. And additionally, Taurus, you may also feel that something needs to be resolved, or even that something is in a sort of halfway stage. It's half done, it's half completed, but you're not quite there, and you might be of the opinion that it's just best to wait. And I can certainly see that approach. We know when the moon is in Taurus in a day or two's time, things are going to be easier. Things may be easier when Venus moves into Virgo, because Venus, your ruler, really is on the verge of changing sign. And as I said yesterday, I think, it is a bit of a two-edged sword, Venus moving into Virgo, but I think that by and large, when that sign change happens, you're going to feel sort of happier and more constructive, and also sort of more creative. If you can't do everything you want to do today, then don't be too worried about it. Still, like yesterday, I think that you are going to be quite good at talking, and you can say things which strike a chord with other people. So you might think that you have a unique view, that no one else is quite on your wavelength, but that's not necessarily the case. So if you say something that you regard as being important, then it's very likely that those that hear you will agree with you. And it may be that a time, Taurus, when you can just say things that other people would like to say, but they can't say. And so that's a situation which I would have regarded as being quite favourable. You can almost adopt, some kind of leadership, at least sort of intellectual leadership, because you have ideas which strike a chord with everyone else, because everyone is going to come to the same conclusions as you in the end, but perhaps you're coming to those conclusions first. Now, another thing we've got today, Taurus, is Neptune going retrograde. And, Neptune going retrograde, well, it happens once a year. It's not necessarily so unusual. Well, it's not unusual, but with Neptune going retrograde, it kind of reflects what I was just talking about, the fact that you understand things which are in the end going to become obvious to everyone, but you might be there first, because I think, Taurus, you are in tune with the collective, with the deeper side of the collective. And, if you have thoughts and you have dreams and you have ideas that seem a bit unusual and you wonder, where are they coming from? It just might be that you're tuning into something that is developing. Perhaps it's a developing trend. And, while you feel something is changing, you might be a little bit uneasy. You're wondering, where is it going to all end? And you might look at the developing future and take the view that it's not entirely positive. I mean, it might even seem a little bit dangerous. But the point is, Taurus, you have, in a quite subtle way, got your finger on the pulse. And so if you have strange thoughts, strange impressions over the day, you might at first think it's just you. You just have ideas. Your unconscious is just producing some garbage. But no, I think it's actually very, very real, and it's something that you do need to be. You need to be, very, very aware of. So it's okay to be ever so slightly unusual. And, additionally, perhaps, Taurus, if you do have unusual thoughts, to begin with, it might be best to keep them to yourself, to sort of think about them, because, we get all sorts of impressions, we have all sorts of ideas, and some of it is just junk. And we know if it is junk, we know about it pretty quickly. But if we still have the same ideas a day or two later, then that really does indicate that something has happened, that we've realized something important. So maybe you should just hold the thought, hold the idea until the moon moves into Taurus, and then you can tell everyone what's on your mind. If you think it's relevant, if you think that it's important, but don't underestimate yourself. And additionally, Taurus, although I think that you might feel that you should be keeping a low profile, you don't necessarily want to draw attention to yourself. That doesn't mean to say that you can't have an impact, because Venus, your ruler, is moving through late Leo, and it's actually moving towards a conjunction with Regulus, the royal star. And so, when you've got planets conjunct Regulus, that might mean that you have an opportunity to get noticed. It can also be about making connections with important people. And who are important people? Okay, when you're thinking about Regulus, you think about royalty, presidents, kings, queens, prime ministers. But it needn't just be about that. It's people who are relatively important. Important in terms of your life and your success. So maybe if there's someone who you're slightly afraid of because they're at some sort of exalted level relative to you, you might be afraid of getting in touch. But with Venus moving through Regulus, I think it might be worth your while, and that would especially be the case, for example, if you were looking for a job or a promotion, or you just wanted recognition. I think that you can get recognition, and so if you feel you deserve something, if you deserve to be paid more attention, then I would urge you not to be shy. Venus conjunct Regulus. Over the next few days, it's not just about today. In fact, Venus is going to be close to Regulus, over the next, what's Tuesday now, so I don't know, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So you've got a few days to make the most of Venus conjunct Regulus and to really make sure that you are noticed by the right people. Gemini, you're feeling quite enthusiastic. Perhaps more enthusiastic than usual. Being a Gemini, you can sometimes overthink things. You can think about all the ways in which things can go wrong, or you might convince yourself that there's no point. You don't want to be too idealistic. You don't want to have airs and graces which are sort of beyond your station, and you might think, oh, it's just best to stick to maybe just what you know and trust. I know that's not a Gemini thing. Geminis need a bit of variety, but there's always that possibility of pouring cold water on things. But no, I think Gemini, you do have real enthusiasm, and if you do feel enthusiasm, I don't think that you should be embarrassed about it. You look at Mercury. Mercury is your ruler, and you can see from the chart that Mercury is part of a conjunction involving itself, the Sun and Jupiter. Now I know that the Jupiter has changed sign, but you can see by eye that Mercury is sort of halfway between the Sun and Jupiter. So there's a lot of Sun Jupiter energy here for you, and Sun Jupiter is about enthusiasm. You believing that there really are things that you can do, and it's okay to be optimistic, and so don't hold back. And if you think that something might be possible, then it really might be possible, and you don't have to keep it to yourself. At the moment, with the moon moving through Aries, it's making a lot of aspects, and some of those aspects on the face of it might seem a bit difficult. But I think that those aspects, the moon is conjunct Saturn, moon is conjunct Neptune, the moon is on the Saturn Neptune midpoint. Yeah, sure. So there are all sorts of reasons why you might have doubts, but fundamentally, with the moon conjunct Aries, square the Sun, there is real value in pushing yourself forward, in interacting, seeing who is available, and if you can show enthusiasm in a public way, it's in such a way that everyone can see. I think that it will go down well. And just what might be a problem, is your own doubts, and that might be Moon conjunct Saturn. You might be afraid of pushing yourself, of drawing attention to yourself. But I really don't think that you need to have this kind of fear. And additionally, like I was just saying a day or two ago, the North Node is still in Pisces, and so this is a time to be projecting yourself forward. It's not not a time to be holding back. And if you want to have an impression, then I think that you very much can have an impression, and you can additionally you get a good idea about what other people want. I mean, what they want deep down. And this is because Neptune is just turning retrograde. So with Neptune turning retrograde, you might think that that's not great. I mean, Neptune is this sort of collective planet. You could say that it is the ultimate collective planet. Okay, I know that you've got Uranus and Pluto are both pretty collective, but the thing with Neptune is that it is able to seep through the boundaries. It really is connected, with the collective unconscious. And so with Neptune turning retrograde, people's hopes, fears, desires, aspirations, they can all be seen. At least Gemini, you can see them. You are aware of it all. And, because of that, I think that you can have a powerful impact. And so remember, I was saying right at the beginning of this piece on Gemini that you can be enthusiastic. Now, enthusiastic just doesn't mean just, being enthusiastic for the sake of it. It's about tuning in to what other people want, what other people are looking for, their hopes and their wishes for the future. So you can tune into all of this, and you can feed it back, potentially in a way that really is very very compelling. So this does mean, Gemini, if you are in a position where you are trying to be of influence. I won't say that you're an influencer, but you're trying to have an influence. You're trying to get people to pay attention to you. You're trying to demonstrate that, maybe you are more important than other people. Okay, that doesn't sound good, but, we live in a competitive situation. Things are always competitive. And I think that, you can get noticed both on a collective and an individual level. So if you're in a group, in a group, if you're talking to a group of people, then I think your enthusiasm is kind of quite obvious. It can be obvious if you make the smallest amount of effort, or if you're dealing with someone on a one-to-one level. I think just being positive and constructive and thinking about the reason why things can happen rather than just being negative. So, Geminis can be negative, but I don't think right now, Gemini, it is a time to be negative. Absolutely not. So Gemini, you be yourself, be enthusiastic, and I think that it can be a great Tuesday. Cancer. The moon is in Aries all day long, and of course the moon is in a cardinal sign, and it's kind of doing stuff. I mean, you've got the moon making a conjunction to Neptune, conjunction to Saturn. It's also making a square to the sun, and while this is happening, the sun is square Saturn. So yesterday you had sun square Saturn, and so today, Cancer, is kind of more of the same. And this is not necessarily fun, but it does to an extent put the spotlight on you. And so Cancer, it's not really a time to be lazy. It is a time to be thinking about how you could be having an impact. And part of this is connected with the fact that Saturn and Neptune are in Aries. Aries is an important sign in the Cancerian chart, and with Saturn and Neptune in Aries, you're certainly able to be successful in a general sense. And Neptune in Aries, you kind of know where things are heading. Cancerians do know where things are heading, and they can align themselves with the future. And you can particularly align yourself with the future today, because Neptune is retrograde, or at least it's turning retrograde. Well, today's the day it stations. I think it stations at 11. I think it's 11:55 London time that Neptune comes to a standstill. And with Neptune going retrograde, a lot of people might be concerned about Neptune retrograde. They might think that at some level, it's bad. But the question is, why is it bad? What does it mean for a planet to be retrograde? Well, what it means for a planet to be retrograde is that it is absolutely still. And if a planet is absolutely still, it has extra power. And so, you can really feel that Neptune energy. And in fact, the moon is conjunct Neptune during the first part of the day. And so with moon conjunct a stationary Neptune, that Cancer really allows you to understand what is happening, and additionally, where you fit in. I mean, the moon is your ruler, and the moon, having made a conjunction to Neptune, it moves on and makes a conjunction to Saturn. And for sure, with moon on the Saturn-Neptune midpoint, there could be moments of fear. You may be wondering whether you're good enough, whether you've got what it takes. But I feel pretty sure, Cancer, that you really are good enough, and you understand things that other people just don't get. And so that does give you, a certain responsibility. And additionally, last quarter moon. So last quarter moon, the lunation cycle is coming to an end, and with this lunation cycle, there are, I believe, things that you have to do, or at least you should be doing. I mean, look at the sun. I mean, the sun is at 16 degrees Cancer. It's halfway through your sign. I mean, in a couple of weeks' time, the sun will be in a Leo, and it might be that when the sun moves into Leo, you might feel that you had your chance, but you didn't necessarily take advantage of it. And with the moon square sun, it perhaps forces you to address what needs to be done, right now. And I think, Cancer, what you do need to do is, really, push things as far as you can. It's not a time to be lazy. It's not a time to wait. It's not a time to assume that someone else is going to do it. I think that you've got to really be ready to take the initiative. But take the initiative not in a crazy way. Do it in a way that is very methodical, as is fitting of the moon making a conjunction to Saturn. And looking at relationships can work well today, but it depends. It depends to an extent on the power dynamic. And if you are dealing with someone who is a lot more powerful than you, or perhaps recently they have been asserting their power and pushing their weight around, then maybe relationships should be treated with a certain degree of caution. I mean, moon is making a conjunction to Saturn. I mean, moon conjunct Saturn can be overwhelming. And if someone has recently been a problem, then they could be even more of a problem. But if you're dealing with a relationship where things are quite clear, where it's quite clear what the relationship is about, what the power dynamic is, what you have to offer, what the other person has got to offer, where you understand the other person and you know what's at stake, then I think relationships can actually be pretty constructive. And this especially applies to relationships taking place, for example, at work, or where you and someone else have a common goal, perhaps a material goal. In that kind of situation, I think that relationships look good, but don't put yourself in a position where you are sort of enthralled to another person, where you're giving someone too much respect, or you're trying your hardest not to offend them. It's always you having to make the effort. If it's that kind of relationship, then I wouldn't bother. I don't think, in the short term at least, it would be going anywhere good. So it's you're very much a case with relationships as you have to think ahead. You have to ask yourself, what is this relationship about? And is it well defined? And just make sure that it's not a situation where you might be taken advantage of, or just feel that you can't fully express yourself, and that the power equation just could be in the other person's favor. And that's not something you obviously want. Leo. Sun, by the way, is halfway through Cancer. I mean, it really is. I mean, it's 15 and a half Cancer. So we could say nearly there. In 2 weeks' time, the Sun will be going into Leo. And, of course, the Sun rules Leo. So every year, when that happens, when the Sun enters Leo at the end of July, this can be a time for you when you have a lot of power. And so if you have been in a situation where you haven't fully been able to assert yourself, then it's not going to last forever. And things are moving forward, and you can almost see the light at the other end of the tunnel. But Leo, I don't want to suggest that things are necessarily that difficult. I mean, after all, Jupiter has now entered your sign, and you may be thinking about this. Jupiter is a fortunate planet, so you would perhaps be thinking that now that Jupiter's in Leo, you should be able to sort of start to get the benefits in terms of luck and feeling happy and enthusiastic. But it's quite possible you won't really feel Jupiter in Leo until the Sun does change sign. So if at the moment you're rather underwhelmed by the Sun, by Jupiter in Leo, don't worry. In a couple of weeks' time, I think you're going to start to really see the full power and beneficial force of this sign change. And as far as the specifics of today are concerned, I think, Leo, it really does matter that you get a perspective, that you don't get caught on things. You might find that there are certain things going on around you that you don't like the look of, that just seem rather heavy. I mean, part of this is the fact that the Sun has just made a square to Saturn, and the Sun was square Saturn yesterday, but it's still making a square to Saturn. And additionally, if you are into sort of hypotheticals, which I am, I do use some of Alfred Vitter's hypothetical planets. It's true to say that the Sun is making a conjunction to Hades, and Hades can be quite a difficult energy. Hades can, as I was suggesting at the beginning of this video, it can be about decay, it can be about things that are bad, things that are rotten, it can be about garbage. Literally, it can be about garbage. And so when you look around you with the Sun conjunct Hades, you can just feel the pressure of it all, and you can perhaps see the ugliness of the world around you. And I mean, I think you could say that the Sun square Saturn is doing that as well, but when you've got the Sun square Saturn and conjunct and making a conjunction to Hades, it really does sort of emphasize it. And so if that's how the world seems, it's good that you see the world for how it is. I mean, you don't want to wear rose-tinted spectacles, but at the same time, Leo, you don't want to exaggerate. You don't want to think that this is an immediate problem, a problem that has suddenly cropped up and it's all ghastly. No, it's something that has been developing over a period of time, and it's something that probably other people are experiencing as well. And perhaps, Leo, if we're trying to be positive about it, it is good that you are noticing how ugly things are. Because if you notice ugliness and you notice the way things are in a state of decay and disintegration, that perhaps does give you an advantage, because it allows you to take action, and you may be the first person to act. Other people might not notice it, they might not want to notice it, but you, Leo, you understand what's going on, and this means that you can start to think what exactly are you going to do. Now, it might be that this such action is about taking concrete steps to make things better, and again, not much you necessarily have to do today, or maybe even over the next couple of weeks. Maybe when Jupiter, Jupiter's already in Leo, but maybe when the Sun moves into Leo as well, that's when you have the vision and the impetus to actually do something about it. And so don't think that what is happening around you is your personal problem. It's everyone else's problem, but it's just that you're perhaps slightly more aware than other people. Additionally, Leo, it can be a day that is exciting. I mean, the moon is in Aries, the moon is in a fire sign, and that does give you a bit of sort of get up and go. It gives you some sort of enthusiasm, and you are able to come over, I think, as a fairly interesting, even exciting person. And you might find, as far as other people are concerned, that there are sudden events. People do things that you weren't expecting. People appear when you don't expect it. And okay, at first that might be somewhat disturbing. You'd made your preparations, you thought that things were going to unfold in a particular way, and suddenly they don't, and you might have to make new plans. But that's okay, and I think that you should be prepared for the unexpected, especially when it comes to other people. Even if you know someone really well, it doesn't mean to say that they're always going to behave in a particular way, and they might at times be a law unto themselves, and rather than be disturbed by this fact, I think that you should just see it as evidence that life is interesting, and that people are not robots. They're able to make their own decisions. Now, one thing happening today, which I should say something about, is Neptune going stationary retrograde. So Neptune has come to a standstill in early Capricorn, and Neptune will be retrograde until December the 12th. I think it stations. I think it goes back to 137 Aries, and so this Neptune stationing might say something about your ideas and your broad philosophy, and perhaps your spirituality, and you may think, or you may have been thinking, that you really understood things, that you understood what you believed in, you understood what you believed in, not just in a spiritual sense, but maybe in a sort of a political and ideological sense. Or it just could be an either or. I mean, some people are really concerned about their spiritual beliefs. Other people are more concerned about their political beliefs, and they make a distinction there. Other people, they regard their spirituality and their politics as being one and the same thing. But with Neptune going stationary direct, it just might be an opportunity, Leo, to think again. Have you really understood things? Okay, it's good to have clarity, but it's actually possible to have too much clarity. You decide you want to end discussion. It's like a committee having a furious discussion about what is true. They have this furious discussion, and then someone said, "That's it. We've got to make our mind up right now." And as soon as everyone's made up their mind, it's got to be done now. We have a vote, and that's it. I think in sort of communist language, I think that's called democratic centralism. But maybe you can have democratic centralism sort of taking place on a personal level. You think that everything has been decided, and so there's no point in having any more discussions because it's fixed. But unfortunately, things are not quite as fixed as you might like them to be. And you may see evidence, maybe even today, that some of your ideas are not 100% perfect, and that there are exceptions, edge cases that could be challenging. No need to panic, and between now and the end of the year, it just might be a time to just reconsider what you believe in, and it shouldn't be too dramatic, and indeed it might be quite liberating. One thing that can really tie people down is fixed beliefs, and right now that's not what you need. Virgos sometimes have a reputation for being rather down to earth, and they like to be realistic. They look at the details. I know that's sort of textbook stereotyping of Virgos. I mean, there's I think an element of truth in that, but we don't want to exaggerate. But you can focus sometimes so much on the details that you miss out on the big picture, and you can sort of prevent yourself from enjoying something, seeing the possibilities that might be available, because you just are perhaps too critical. You perhaps see how things could go wrong, and perhaps it's because you're just being too cautious. But at the moment, Virgo, if you look at the chart, you will see that there is still a sort of a very wide conjunction between the Sun, Mercury, and Jupiter. So I know that Jupiter's changed sign; it's moved into Leo. But if you look at the chart, there's Mercury and in Cancer, and on one side of it is the Sun, and on the other side of it is Jupiter, and the angular distance between the Sun and Mercury, and the Sun and Mercury and Jupiter is quite similar, and so that conjunction does provide the possibility here of you having a potential to be enthusiastic and to really see the potential of things. So if you are presented with a new idea, or maybe you come up with your own idea, don't just shoot it down. I mean, because that's easiest. You might feel that it's just this idea is not workable. You might think that you might even think that it could be threatening, and so it's just best to not worry about it, to just discard it. But don't do that. Just really consider how things could work. This is a time, Virgo, to be moving beyond your own limits, or at least your self-set limits. You've created limits for yourself, perhaps. So you think that you certain things you can do, certain things you can't do, and it's simple as that. So let's not be too over ambitious. But now, do go beyond yourself. And Uranus, don't forget, went into Gemini quite recently. There's still a conjunction between Mars and Uranus, okay, it has a rather bad reputation for being, rather sort of violent and accident prone and so on, but it's also about you as an individual, and you being able to tune into your own individuality, and being able to sort of take a stand and being able to see what is possible. So I would really suggest, Virgo, that you are as as optimistic as you can be. You're not going to be over optimistic. You're a Virgo. You know where the limits are, and so you're not going to do anything crazy, but you are going to be aware of possibilities, and you should be, as far as is possible, enthusiastic, not just about, your own ideas, but also other people's ideas. So if you are presented with something, someone makes a suggestion, for example, don't just immediately look for the problems, look for the faults and the flaws. Think about how it could work. And that then means that you can be a plus in, everyone's life. Again, if you're prepared to make the effort. Now, I still can see, Virgo, that you might be taking things rather seriously at the moment. There is a last quarter moon, and this last quarter moon, we've got the sun in Cancer and the moon in Aries. And with the sun in Cancer, it is a time when the average Virgo is going to be quite sociable and is going to be want to be with people, being able to enjoy other people's company, and that's all well and good. But the moon in Aries is challenging that, and the moon is not just in Aries; it's making a conjunction to Saturn. So you can certainly see the problems of unfettered socializing. Too much socializing with the wrong people could be dangerous, and you're certainly able to analyze. You're able to analyze really well at the moment. Okay, analysis is something that we can generally associate with the average Virgo, but it's really quite deep analysis, and you might be in a position where you can see a group of people, and you just know exactly what's going on. You understand the dynamics, and you know where it's all going. And if there's a problem, you see that problem, so you can almost maybe you can watch the lemmings as they go past, and you know where the cliff is, and you know what they could do wrong. Well, you know what they're going to do when they reach the cliff's edge. So, you do have that higher knowledge of human psychology. But as I was saying at the beginning, you don't want to exaggerate. You don't want to use that knowledge. That pessimism, actually, is sort of a pessimism about human nature and what people are, what people are doing to themselves, and perhaps what they're doing to their society as well. That pessimism could potentially get out of hand, and it shouldn't cancel out the enthusiasm I was talking about. So be enthusiastic, as I've already said, and don't worry about being over optimistic, because you're not going to be over optimistic. You know the limitations of human nature. You know what people are like, and you know the kind of damage they're capable of inflicting. But you don't want to dwell on that. And if you see something which is good, where you see something that might work, you see people having ideas that sound positive, then really try to work with what is going on. And I think that, Virgo, you might be in a position to make something happen that perhaps wouldn't have happened, or at least happen in a successful way, if you hadn't made some constructive intervention. Libra, there is quite a lot of activity in Aries, which is, of course, your opposite sign. I mean, we've got the moon in Aries, we've got the moon making a conjunction to Saturn, we've got the moon making a conjunction to Neptune. I think we've got sort of a moon on the Saturn-Neptune midpoint. In fact, the moon is besieged by Saturn and Neptune. So the term besieged is quite sort of an old term. If a planet is besieged, usually that means that it's got malefics on either side. And so you could say that the moon is rather hemmed in by Saturn and Neptune. So that sounds, a bit difficult. I mean, it could be difficult, but, it depends. So with this activity in Aries, and don't forget the moon is also making a square to the sun, it might be that certain people could be a problem. So, this is a time, Libra, where I think that you are taking people more seriously than usual. You are aware of social pressure. You're perhaps aware of the damage people could do if you give them the chance, and it just might seem at the same time that your freedom is somewhat restricted by the social environment, and perhaps also by particular individuals. So as you go through the day, Libra, I think you need to be careful about who you spend your time with, and if you were to spend all day long in company, whether it's in a group or with particular individuals, it might well be that you just feel somewhat overwhelmed, that it is really difficult to be yourself, and you have to worry endlessly about what other people are doing, what other people are wanting, and you just don't have any time to think about your own material and things that are important to you. So I would suggest that you think about what you're going to be doing today, Tuesday, and you plan it so that you have a certain amount of variety, and that you don't give any one person too much power, too much control, that you don't spend too much time with them. And if you find, though, that it's unavoidable, that you can't get away from it, that certain people they're always going to be there, then I think it's important that you're able to talk, express yourself, tell everyone what's on your mind, because you can be quite effective if you give it to people straight, even if you don't want to give it to people straight. I think you can really have an impact. And when we're talking about other people being a problem, or as Sartre said, hell being other people, isn't that right? So if other people are a problem, it could be that it's because you allow them to become a problem. You allow them to, for example, dominate the conversation. You allow them to be assertive, or overly assertive. You don't assert yourself. So you allow it. If you allow something to happen, then it will happen. On the other hand, Libra, if you are open and honest, and you take every opportunity to say how you feel, to express your opinion, I think that then the power dynamic might change. It might be the case that you can start to assert yourself, and it really start to have an impact. And it might be the case, Libra, that you can be the one saying things that people don't want to hear, and that might be the best way of dealing with someone who is being obnoxious, who is got a high opinion of themselves, is trying to dominate proceedings. You just give it to them straight. You say what's on your mind. You even just express some of your observations, and that might be enough to assert control over the situation. And additionally, Venus is your ruler, and Venus is in late Leo, and Venus is therefore moving towards a conjunction of Regulus. Regulus is the royal star, a star associated with kingship and also with success. And so with Venus making a conjunction to Regulus, this might say something about yourself and your importance. So don't underestimate your importance. You can certainly make an impact, and Regulus can be regarded as just a generally positive influence. William Lilly in Christian Astrology, he said that if a planet is within 5 degrees of Regulus, you give it extra points, because he has a point system for evaluating the planets in a chart. And so, I think a planet within 5 degrees of Regulus, regardless of sign, gets those extra 5 points. And so that does actually make you stronger. And if you are in a situation where someone else appears to be dominating proceedings, remember about Venus conjunct Regulus. Goes back to what I was saying. If you assert yourself, if you express your views, then I think that you can take control, pretty quickly. And Venus conjunct Regulus, Regulus is the royal star. It's about important people. It's about, kings and queens and so forth. And this might be a time, Libra, where you can get in touch with people who could be important, who could be good for you. And that is another reason why you don't want to get sidetracked by one person dominating your attention. They want things from you. They won't let you go, and before you know it, the day's gone. But if you're able to keep moving, then I think you have a chance to get in touch with people or contact people who really could be very good for you if you gave them a chance. And with these planets in Aries, there is another side to things. And so I started off saying other people could be a problem, and I think they really can be a problem, particularly as the moon is besieged by Saturn and Neptune. Certain people could bring your day to a grinding halt, but there are other people, some people, but you've got to find them, who really could be useful. They could help you achieve your ambitions. If you give them a chance, if you create the right opportunity. And you shouldn't be afraid of anyone. You shouldn't regard someone as being sort of too elevated, too important for humble you to get in touch with them. No, I think that anyone is capable of being there for you. And so don't hold back socially, and the right social contact can I believe really help you. And I think this is especially the case in terms of work and career, business. You don't have to do everything on your own, and if you're trying to create an opportunity for yourself, I think you can with the help of the right person. Scorpio, we have the moon continuing to move through Aries, and the moon's position is a bit difficult. I mean, it's halfway between Saturn and Neptune. The moon is also making a square to the sun, and when we're trying to work out what's happening astrologically, particularly with these daily forecasts, we do have to spend a lot of time looking at the moon. I mean, the moon is a planet that it moves faster from everything else, and so it creates action. And so with the moon in Aries, it might be the case that there are things that you just need to pay attention to. And it might not be anything that you really want to have to bother with, that you almost would feel as if you'd prefer to be doing something else. But some things can't be avoided. And so if you feel any sense of obligation that something has to be done, you'd prefer not to do it, but then I think you should do it, and you should do it, with a good heart, and have a constructive attitude. Because just because something is boring, or just because you are slightly resentful, doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. And when I say resentful, that might be because you kind of feel that, strictly speaking, it should be someone else doing it. Maybe someone is neglecting their own duties and their own obligations, and so it's all down to you. So, that would explain some degree of resentment. But perhaps you're the only person that could do it. I mean, the thing about you doing stuff is that you know how to do it well. If you let someone else do it, well, anything could happen. Additionally, with the moon, on the Saturn-Neptune midpoint, because the moon kind of starts the day making it conjunct Neptune. Then later in the day, perhaps towards the end of the day, it makes a conjunction to Saturn. Don't think that you have got all the power in the world. Don't think that you are a sort of a dynamo of endless energy. That is not the case. It might be that you're like a phone that's on 20%. So if you're on 20%, there are certainly things you can do. You can do what needs to be done. You can make the calls that need to be made. But if a phone is on 20% and you just do everything with the phone, you're gonna run out of battery. And so, at the beginning of the day, think about what you need to do and do it. And if you've got any power left when you've accomplished everything that needs to be done, well, then that's a bonus. And this applies not just to the hours in a day, but to your physical energy. I think you are aware of your limitations, and you certainly don't want to be pushing it, particularly with Moon conjunct Saturn. And there is another way of looking at all of this, and we do have a last quarter moon, and with the last quarter moon, the Sun is in Cancer, Moon is in Aries. So some Scorpios may be feeling that they are ready to move on, do something new and exciting. Sun in Cancer. And then that Moon in Aries just reminds you that now is not necessarily the right time, or rather, you can have all the wonderful ideas in the world, but there are still just things that need to be done. And I'm sorry to be a little bit boring there, but I just don't think that we can just discard or ignore the fact that we've got this last quarter moon, which is conjunct Saturn. And as far as your work is concerned, if you're working today, it might be the case that some of the things you're involved with are not always very easy. There might at times be a bit of unpleasantness, but it's the kind of unpleasantness you can deal with. Maybe you're just dealing with the unpleasantness of particular people. You can see what is motivating other people. You can see that they're not always very nice. Maybe the people you're working with, or someone who is offering you business or whatever, maybe just someone you have to work with in some kind of professional setting. And on a positive note, Venus is still moving through Leo, and Venus is moving towards a conjunction of Regulus. And with Venus conjunct Regulus, don't discount anyone. Even if you don't like someone, if someone has done something bad in the past, or you regard someone as being useless, you don't quite know. And just be ready for the possibility of just some kind of surprise. Someone just doing something that, or suggesting something, or creating an opportunity that you really hadn't expected. So everyone has the potential to be useful. And if you meet someone for the first time, it's very important that you don't make assumptions. And I'm thinking, okay, it might be about sort of general relationships, but it could be about someone who has an opportunity for you. They could present a real chance, maybe in a financial or career sense, and you just might not see that opportunity. So it's very important that in a social sense that you are as open-minded as possible. And additionally, Scorpio, your overall ability to make people feel welcome and to make people feel part of things is actually at the moment pretty good. So perhaps you can use this facility to benefit everyone, you included. Sagittarius. So Sagittarius, the moon is now very much in Aries, and on its own, that's good. The moon is in Aries. I mean, Aries is a fire sign. Yesterday the moon in Aries was making a trine to Jupiter, and it just might feel that things are starting to move. You can feel that fire. And finally you're getting out fire, and you've got Jupiter, of course, going to stay in Leo until the end of July of next year. So that looks good. But the moon in Aries does make a square to the sun. It also makes a conjunction to Saturn, and so you might find that things might actually be a bit slower than usual, or slower than you'd expected. You thought that everything was moving, that everything was sort of happy and spontaneous, and it all looked good. And then, particularly with moon conjunct Saturn, you might hit an obstacle, something you thought was going to be absolutely easy, something that was completely within your abilities. It's just going to be completely straightforward. That's what you imagined. That's how you imagined it. And somehow the reality might be different. So if something suddenly becomes difficult, don't panic. It's just a learning process, and you just have to work out what the problem is, work out what kind of effort is required, and you put the effort in, and I think you're going to be able to sort of resolve the problem. And it might not even be just a problem. It could be, in a way, an opportunity to make something sort of more stable and secure. That is the nature of Saturn. So you do something that is not particularly focused, is all over the place, and it just doesn't have any ability to last because it hasn't been properly planned. But when you've got Saturn involved, when you've got Moon conjunct Saturn, that means that you can take something which might be constructive, but it's also totally chaotic, and you can create a structure around it. And by creating that structure, you are creating a possibility of something that actually can last. It's not just going to be a one-day wonder. And so there is a toughness to today. Some things are perhaps going to be a little difficult, but a main feature of today is taking yourself seriously. If you take yourself seriously, I think that you will be rewarded. And in particular, it's a time to be taking your own creativity seriously. Even if you don't, strictly speaking, feel that you are in the mood. I mean, the sun is in Cancer, and we do have a last quarter moon, and so some Sagittarians might take this last quarter moon as being about an insurmountable obstacle. There was something you enjoyed doing, and you ran into a problem. You thought it was more serious. You realize you realize it's serious, and you just don't want to bother with it anymore. So you give up. There is a give up possibility here with Sagittarians. You just stop doing something, and it is working. but you give up at the first sign of trouble. And I think that this last quarter moon is encouraging you to persist. Even if the odds seem to be against you, even if you're not in the mood, persist. Keep working away. And with this last quarter moon, with the power of this last quarter moon, I think you through that perseverance, you'll be able to get through the obstacle. And in the end, Sagittarius, I think that you can really bring things together. And yeah, it's going to be hard work, but I think it's certainly worth the effort. And while you're at it, don't neglect other people. Sometimes Sagittarius, you haven't got everything you need. Maybe you just don't have the enthusiasm. You're looking for enthusiasm. You're trying to tell yourself that everything is fine, you've got what it takes, but then you have self-doubt, and it's the self-doubt that could just stop you in your tracks. And so how do you make up for that? Well, one way of making up for it is that, just like what I've been said, you are persistent. You just keep going. Another way is to talk to other people. Some people are really very positive, and they know you well, and they know what you can achieve. And if you're open about some of your worries and concerns, then I think you might get valuable feedback. Not just feedback, but support and encouragement. So it's important that you don't feel that it's all down to you. That it's up to you to make everything happen. It's up to you to maintain your enthusiasm. It's not. I think that with the right help and with the right company, I think that you can really get things together. Capricorn. There's kind of a lot going on at the moment. We've got a last quarter moon, and this last quarter moon is tied up with Saturn, and we've got a conjunction between the moon and Saturn, and the moon actually also makes a conjunction to Neptune, and Neptune is going stationary direct, and this is taking place in Aries, and it might feel, Capricorn, that things are coming to a halt, that things are not moving as quickly as you would like them to, and you just find yourself just staying in one place. There are other things going on, but it just might be just difficult to get it together. It might be because there are all sorts of pressures that you're not interested in, pressures that you don't want to know about, but you still have to think about them. And it could be an unsatisfactory day, but I don't think it need be an unsatisfactory day. I think that you have to believe, Capricorn, that you have the strength to see it through. And also, don't think that you need to be entirely limited to one thing. And I think that there are going to be some challenges today. And the challenge perhaps is for you to perhaps give something a go. You may convince yourself that there's no point. It's all a waste of time. So it's just best to do nothing. And so when those challenges come, you might, to begin with, respond in quite a hostile way, or at least a negative way. That Sun square Saturn. That Sun is in Cancer, and Cancer is your opposite sign, and so the Sun represents an external force that you might not be particularly sympathetic towards. You see it as being maybe a threat or a distraction, or as a time waster, but it might not be any of those. It might just be something or someone who wants the best for you and is encouraging you to take things further and to make the most of what you've got. And what you mustn't do is just feel stuck and just keep saying no. That's something Capricorns could do. You just say no to every idea. It's not going to work. It's all a waste of time. And that reflects some of the negativity of Capricorn. You can be very negative, when you want to be. And this can especially be the case when you've got Moon conjunct Saturn. I mean, the Moon could be representative of another person who you don't listen to, you don't take seriously, you ignore them, you reject their advice. But so if, from a relationship view, if someone is close to you and they're trying to get your attention, they're trying to tell you something, and you're not being sympathetic, well, perhaps you should give it another go. Do give people a chance, because I think that in most cases they want you to be successful. They want you to be happy. They want you to be positive and constructive. And additionally, Capricorn, perhaps you have a responsibility to be constructive, and maybe a social responsibility, and you shouldn't worry too much about other people and thinking that certain people might be undermining you, or they might be challenging you, and you kind of want to be alone, that kind of thing. No, Capricorn, I think that you really should give people a chance, but it doesn't mean to say you have to give people full control. It's not like that. Sure, if you just allow someone to do whatever they want, then things might not work out very well. It might all become very, very confusing. But I don't think that's going to be happening, because right now, Capricorn, I think you're very aware of your own boundaries. Arguably, Capricorn, you're too aware of your own boundaries. Aquarius. The moon continues moving through Aries, and with the moon moving through Aries, it's a good sign for the moon to be in. It's a place, Aquarius, where the moon finds it easy to express itself, and you find it easy to express yourself. And if you want to, I think that you can get your message across loudly and clearly. So if there's something you want to say or write, then go ahead, and I think you're going to be very effective. You're also going to be, I think, quite well disciplined, because the moon is making a conjunction to Saturn. So moon conjunct Saturn, it might sound a difficult aspect, very sort of heavy, and Saturn closing the moon down, but there is a constructive way of looking at moon conjunct Saturn. It's about you fine-tuning your message, getting the words absolutely right. You know what you want to say, and as soon as you start expressing yourself, it's just absolutely clear. And so, Aquarius, you can be really very definite if you want to be. And the question is, what can you be definite about? Well, you can be definite about your impressions. You can be quite tough right now with moon conjunct Saturn, but at the same time, you have a real sensitivity. You're picking up on all sorts of things. You have a good understanding of other people's feelings and how far people are prepared to go, and because of this, you have the opportunity to act and communicate in a way that is spot on. You'll know exactly what to say, and you're not going to come over as being insensitive or unreasonable. So from a communication perspective, I think that you can trust yourself to get it right, and at the same time, it's important that you're ready to seek clarification. So if you're doing things today, particularly if these things have been suggested to you by others, or maybe you've accepted a particular task. Maybe you've been told to do something. You're doing something, or you've been advised to do something, and your first impulse might be to just do it, and in fact not to ask too many questions. I mean, maybe you don't want to embarrass yourself by asking questions or seeking clarification. I think it's actually very important that you do seek clarification. So this might be about you starting a particular task, and it might be quite an important task. And you start this task, and if you don't seek clarification, or perhaps it's a second opinion, then you could spend a lot of time completing the task, but when you finished it, it might be not done properly. Maybe in a bureaucratic sense. I don't know, it could be filling in the wrong things or whatever. So if you're not sure, it's okay to get this clarification. But it seems that Aquarius, you don't want to ask for help. You feel that someone's told you what to do, and they don't want to repeat themselves. If you feel that repetition is important, then make sure there is repetition. And don't forget, Mercury is retrograde, and Mercury going retrograde in Cancer. Okay, it doesn't impact you as much as other signs, for example, Mercury or Gemini, but there are times when Mercury retrograde could be relevant, and I think today might be one of those times. And Mercury retrograde is often about something needing to be repeated, something not being properly understood. So Aquarius, I think it really does matter that you seek clarification if you have any doubts. Pisces. North Node is still in Pisces, still there, hanging on in there. It's getting ready to move out of Pisces and into Aquarius. And the North Node does make a sesquiquadrate to the Sun. And so North Node sesquiquadrate to the Sun, it may say something about your overall mission, or what exactly it is that you are supposed to be doing. What is right for you. And North Node sesquiquadrate the Sun. This aspect is it's about today. It's also, I think, about tomorrow, Tuesday. So it's like you've got a couple of days where this aspect is exact, and there just might be a few doubts, or it might even be a choice. So do you put your energy into one thing, or is it another thing? And we might be talking about something quite creative, something that really is an expression of who you are and what you're good at. And to an extent, it's important that you have good self understanding. You might, for example, be in a situation where you're overly influenced by expectations. So, for example, you might have two possibilities. One thing that you really are good at, it really is completely about you, but it may not be particularly popular. Maybe you think other people aren't interested. There may be another thing which you're okay at, and it's what people want you to do. And there's a temptation, I think, to go for mediocrity. That might be a problem today. You do something that, it's okay. You do a reasonable job, but are you really doing the right thing? And you may be forgetting the really important task, something which is completely about you and what you are really good at. So if you have a choice today and tomorrow on Wednesday, ask yourself, what is an essential expression of you? And it's not a time to be worrying excessively about what other people want. You do need to put yourself first. And in fact, Pisces, if you spend too much time worrying about other people and listening to them, then you could actually get really confused. There are limits to how helpful certain people can be, and if you listen, as soon as you start listening to them, trying to make them happy, then things might go wrong pretty quickly. So I would, as far as is possible, try to be as independent as you can be, and look after the things that matter. We do have, for example, a conjunction between the moon and Neptune, and the moon and Saturn. So you kind of got moon on the Saturn-Neptune midpoint, and that might say something about money. And I think that there is a certain possibility of you getting confused about money, and other people's input could make you even more confused. So if you are dealing with money over the course of the day, I think it's very important that you try your hardest to be down to earth, and you don't listen too much to what other people are saying. You make your own decisions, because Pisces, sometimes this Pisces as a sign has a reputation for being sort of chaotic, and including being chaotic with money, but there is another side to Pisces. Pisces can be very aware of the underlying realities, including the underlying financial realities. And so if something crops up in a financial sense, you don't have to entirely rely on other people. You can make your own decisions. And additionally, it's not just the moon is making a conjunction to Saturn. It's a last quarter moon in Aries. And it could be the case, Pisces, that you are involved in something. Perhaps you've been involved in something for the last 3 weeks, and maybe it's coming together. But the last quarter moon might be a last challenge, and you need to get through that challenge to really make something work. And it could be that the final piece of the jigsaw does relate to money. Everything else is sorted out, but it's just the financial side of things is a bit up in the air, and now might be a chance to really get it all together. And those are my forecasts for the 12 signs. And now it's time to look at things in terms of the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Tuesday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 10, which is treading. This hexagram does seem to come up every now and then, maybe in my imagination, but it seems to come up statistically perhaps more than expected. I'm sure it doesn't. I'm sure that's just a bias there, some cognitive issue on my part. But when you're dealing with treading, one has to be careful, because treading is about where you put your feet, and you're trying to move forward, and if you put your feet in the wrong place, you can fall over, or worse. And of course, when we're talking about treading, we're talking about tigers, and we're talking about tigers' tails. In particular, it's just very important not to tread on the tiger's tail, because if you tread on a tiger's tail, well, anything can happen. It might bite you. And so it just could be, Pisces, that you feel that you need to move forward. Did I say Pisces? Sorry, Pisces is over. I'm not talking about Pisces. I'm not talking about astrology anymore. My apologies. I'm talking about everyone. You got that. I am not just addressing this I Ching reading to those of you who have your ascendant or your sun in Pisces, so forgive me for that. So anyway, treading. You have to tread careful. I have to tread carefully. I have to be careful what I say. And there is this danger of treading on a tiger's tail. And if you tread on a tiger's tail, tiger wakes up, tiger bites you. But this tiger is not especially aggressive by the standard of tigers, and it is actually quite forgiving. So, even if we tread on a tiger's tail, it's not necessarily the end of the world. So this hexagram has two moving lines. So as we move forward, there are particular challenges and particular events. And the bottom line moves. And the bottom line is about the beginning of something, the beginning of a process. It is the first steps. And we're quite modest about it. And Greg Winkup, in his translation of the I Ching, he talks about footwear and what exactly we are wearing on our feet. And he's talking about shoes which are not dyed. So if you have an elevated station, or perhaps you have airs and graces, you might dye your shoes some sort of extravagant colour. I don't know, red or gold or however, or maybe different colours. But the bottom line, they're undyed. They're just plain white shoes. We do not have airs and graces. And we're coming at things from a perspective of quite a lowly position, and we have that modesty. So because we have that modesty, it's less likely that we upset the tiger. And then we move on, and the fourth line moves. So the fourth line is important because we move from a bottom trigram to the top trigram. So in a way, we've made a transition. The bottom trigram perhaps overall represents the beginning of what we were trying to do. And you can see that the top trigram is three unbroken lines. So when we get past that halfway mark, things start to happen. Things become more interesting, more exciting, more dynamic, and more dangerous. And with the fourth line moving, we are aware of those dangers. We are careful, and we're very careful where we put our feet. And it's possible, because it's a dangerous situation, that we actually do tread on the tail of the tiger. And so you imagine you are walking past this tiger and you tread on its tail. The first thing you're going to feel is complete fear, because you know what you've done. You've made a mistake. This is a complicated world. It has become more complicated now that we've moved into the top trigram. And so there is that fear. We're almost waiting for the tiger to respond. And the tiger, for sure, knows that we've tread on its tail, but somehow the tiger just waves us on. We're forgiven for treading on the tiger's tail. So it's not as bad as it seems, but we still have to be very careful. And we should keep in mind the humility that came with the first line. And then we move to a second hexagram, and the hexagram we move to is hexagram number 59, which is dispersion. So we move forward, we get past the tiger, and then things start to happen. It seems that there is some kind of a storm, and it's a situation that we don't have much control over. Things get really chaotic. Things get sort of thrown up in the air. People sort of move this way, that way, and we might just feel that panic. So remember that previous hexagram, when you trod on the tiger's tail, there was a panic, and you've certainly initiated a process. And you perhaps have initiated the process of starting the storm. And the storm comes, it rains, there's thunder, wind, whatever. And we kind of think that we have created a really difficult situation. And what is going to happen? And we might assume the worst, but it's okay. The storm comes, it really turns things upside down. But then it ends, it settles, and we settle, and we're actually in one piece. And in fact, we might have made some progress. We've gone further than we had imagined. The storm may have kind of helped us. Maybe it was a bit of a tailwind. And so in the end, no harm is done. And I think we might even have made quite a lot of progress. And that's it. That's all I'm going to say for today. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link in the description. And I will talk to you again tomorrow.